Welcome to a very special episode of LadyTheFup Podcast. Normally, I would go into a very lengthy introduction talking about the benefits of working with the #1 online coaching company, LadyTheFup, but today I'm going to keep it short because I have with us today a very special guest. He is the founder and CEO of LadyTheFup, ManTheFup, and Hammer Fitness, as well as a bricks and mortar gym located in Scarborough. I'd like to introduce Amer Kamra. This is a first for us, and I'm very excited to sit down and have a chat with him.
Thank you for having me, Debra.
Oh, thank you for coming because I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time, but I know that you are typically in the other chair doing the interviewing. You don't give a lot of interviews, so I really appreciate that you would do that.
Thank you.
I also know that you're a very private person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being a private person, even though you're all over social media, people think that they know you and they think that they get a sense of who you are, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And myself as an employee and as a client, have seen multiple sides. And I think that you don't create what you've created in fitness from being a gym trainer. Let's scale it back 14 years ago, 15 years ago, you were training people on a gym floor that you didn't own the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started developing champions and then pro bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And then you developed a bricks and mortar company and then online company. So there's been a huge progression that people only see what they want to see. So this is why I'm really grateful.
Yeah. Likewise, I'm happy to share, anything that you want to ask. We didn't vet these questions. Well, I didn't. You sent me the list, but I didn't go through it too much.
I have new questions too.
Okay, good. I'm okay with you asking them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So my first question, just to kind of break into, we'll stick with fitness just for the very beginning because we both know that and that's how people know you. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions in the fitness industry?
I think as a whole, in general, one of the biggest misconceptions is that more is better, and I think that's largely what we've created as a brand and what we like to really hammer into our clients, no pun intended, which is that you don't need to do a lot to get the results that you want. And I think that this way of thinking is largely predicated on old way of thinking with many things, that you're guilty of, I'm guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
When we didn't have the resources and the knowledge and the information that we do today. If you look at any industry, whether it's automotive, whether it's medical, technological, we've advanced so much. And I feel this is one of the few industries where, not that we don't have the information or the capability or the resources, it's just people fail to really adopt the advancement of the knowledge that we have. And, I think that for many people, they're using outdated methodologies and outdated ways of doing things that maybe worked for them at one point in their lives. We see this with a lot of the women that we coach. They're stuck and set on doing things, in a way that worked for them. Maybe they were 18 years old or 15 years old, and they're trying to do it now at 40 or 50 or even 60. And, there's diminishing return to that. Every time you do it, it may become a little bit less realistic or sustainable or even effective if you do it the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like this is a long-standing belief that needs to really be changed?
Yes, and I believe that we're doing a really big part in that. I think that our coaches are doing a really good job in the marketing of it, just online in general, whether people are our clients or not. And then also through the education process, working with our clients, the type of success and the type of feedback that we get from people, and then the referrals that they generate as a result of it, because it's one thing to generate a before and an after. That's one thing. That's one level of success. But what happens after that after picture? And, we're really becoming focused on the longevity of working with clients and how we can create these sustainable results. And, sure, we can only work with a certain amount of people at one point, but through the course of, years and years of doing this and the amount of people that we interact with and touch, it's growing largely.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's one thing that I really came to really respect first, because I met you as a client,
Mhm.
and then got the opportunity to be able to work for you, that you don't go for gimmicks.
Mhm.
There's never any gimmicks, and your message stays the same all the time. So where did you learn that type of thought process and not be bouncing around like a lot of fitness people? They're bouncing.
Yeah. Uh, I think it predominantly stems from the fact that I don't desire to be liked.
Right.
I've since I was a kid, I never really had many friends. So it was never my motive or my incentive to be or my motive, sorry, to be popular, right? And
Right.
so it it was never in me to want to do things to appease people or to attract a lot of people. It was always to figure out what the best way of doing something is. And I went to school for architecture, specializing in the engineering aspect of it. And there's a certain way of thinking when you're figuring out problems and solutions. And um, I love solving problems, and I think that a big part of it is just figuring out the best way of doing something and not doing something because it's going to, elicit a response from people in the short term, or it's going to attract people in the short term. And then just through owning a business for a prolonged period, it became reinforced in me that, you become more successful as you do the right thing. And the more you do the right thing, the more people will come on a long-term scale, and it's not about, popularity is not a business model.
No.
You cannot chase popularity because there's going to be a new trend. And my goal is to create a brand and a business that, first and foremost helps a lot of people. And when I say helps a lot of people, it's not just about helping clients, but, just to be transparent, it's also about creating a business where our coaches have a very good level of success as well. And if I was chasing popularity, most of our coaches wouldn't have a job in a year or 2 years because we'd have to be chasing the next trend, and that's not what I'm interested in.
I I have to say that you have completely killed any desire in me to own a business. And I'll tell you why. And that's a compliment. That is a total compliment, because I see the way that you work, and it is 24/7, and you you have a certain level of expectation that your employees rise to that level too, but you also instill in us a sense of ownership.
Mhm.
Like we don't own Lady the F Up or Hammer Fitness or HQ here, but there's a pride that if it didn't come naturally, you have taught us how to tap into that.
Mhm.
So, why do you want to own businesses? Like, why? What's the drive in you? Because it's not money,
Mhm.
and it's certainly not popularity.
Mhm.
So, where does the drive come from?
I was thinking about that today, actually. I was thinking, like, why would anybody want to own a business?
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came to my mind, is like, why would anyone want to do this? And what's the reason for doing this? Because if you're doing it solely for money, there are easier ways of making money. If you're doing it for, a lot of people do it maybe because they don't want to work for somebody. And
Right.
I think that's the wrong reason. I always say this, the wrong reason to own a business or want to own a business, because your clients and even your employees to a degree are your bosses, because you have to hold yourself accountable to that, to an outcome.
Exactly.
So the reason for it, I believe, is that you naturally just fall into that position. I never thought about being a business owner. It was never my goal, but I believe that you will naturally become it. I think that you naturally get good at a skill, and then when you get good at a skill, you get very busy, and then when you get very busy, there's not enough of you to go around, and then you find people that want to do it and that can also help people with that same level of standard and expectation. Unfortunately, I realized and learned the hard way that um, that transition is not very easy. It's not as simple as being so good at a skill and then the overflow you give to other people, because I tried that and that didn't work. So I had to make the decision at some point in time that I'm going to give my all to make sure that our coaches also are as good as they possibly can be, and that's when you become a business owner at that point, where it's not just about you anymore.
Yeah. For people that don't know, because we do try to post it on social media because we're proud of it. you put us through rigorous training every week, every Monday. I mean, we appreciate it, but it's a lot on you and it's also a lot on us. And it's exhausting. And maybe it's because I'm a lot older than the rest of the team. Sometimes my brain gets a bit scrambled. I'm like, oh, it hurts. But I love that you do that. And I don't really think that people understand that in order to keep growing this business, you had to do that. And you changed everything from the moment I've met you to today. You dress differently. You speak differently. You have HQ as very different. I mean, I remember the first time I came in here, I was like, whoa, this is a bodybuilding gym. Like there were big men in here with like those little tiny tank tops that
stringy.
Yeah, like what's the point of wearing it? I always thought like, why do you wear that? And I loved it because it was so raw. And I'd never been part of anything like that. But to be an employee now, to the way you have it now is fantastic. So at what point did you decide, like, were you just pissed off at us that you thought we were dumb? Or like, at what point did you decide, okay, they're going to go through, we all call it Amer School, and I'm going to raise the level? Because it took you, you accelerated through to get your master's in resistance training, and we haven't even scratched the surface. But when was it that you decided that I'm going to do this?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would answer to that question is, to your point, that it's an ongoing process, anyways, of learning, even for myself, right? So that's number one. I had a background already somewhat from going to school for architecture, so I had an understanding of physics to a degree. But to be transparent, it was like I was so disappointed and dissatisfied with our coaches, but not in them as people, just in terms of where they were at and what I was saying to people about how great they were, because I believe that people naturally just would figure it out, and I learned that people naturally won't figure it out. You have to be able to give them the tools and the resources and the environment and all of that to make it happen. So I was just really disappointed, whether it was people left unhappy, whether people were just, dissatisfied, whether they weren't able to produce, whatever those negative things that I felt were. And like with anything in life, I have to look at myself first and not blame anybody. I mean, my natural instinct and inclination is just to blame from right away. We always want to do that, to offload responsibility. But then after I do that, I look within and I say, okay, well, like I can't really expect this of someone if, and this happened many times with our interaction. I would say something like, this person didn't do this. And then you would, give me the right answer. And then it would take me a few days. And then I'd be like, yeah, you're right. And it's because my natural instinct, like anybody else, you want to be defensive. It's my business. It's like telling someone their kid's not good enough. They're going to be defensive right away and reluctant to hearing it. But then, it takes a few days and then it sets in and I say, okay, well, why isn't that person good? Is it because they cannot be good, or is it because I am not doing what's required of me to make them good or to help them become good? And I realized that most people, and especially if they're going to stick around and be around me, to be honest, they want to be good. It's just the reality is, maybe I wasn't providing them the feedback, the resources, the tools, and as a result of that, I created a really good team of people that all contribute in different ways that can do that and that can help, and, obviously you're one of those people that help manage to bring people up to a certain level of expectation and became almost the proxy for what I was saying versus what people should be hearing.
Right. Yes. I know. I always try to deliver your message in the vein that you wanted it to land, but I think sometimes, and I do appreciate this, that the team will sometimes call me the mom. I tried to deliver it in a way that I didn't make people feel like I was coming down hard on them. But you have seen that if I have to, people that don't work for you anymore, I have no problem. But it's always coming from a place of showing respect to what you've done. But I think that something that you had to do is you had to get us to unlearn what the crappy textbooks and I'm sorry, but the bad certifications that are out there. I mean, and this isn't to put shade or blame on things. They just that's a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And people who say that they have a certification, that's a baseline, because I relied on that,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a over 30-year career, and I've learned more in the last year. Like I have to tell you that I took physics in high school, and I cried every day, and my teacher said, please don't take it in grade 11 or grade 12. And I said, no, don't worry. And then here I am learning physics, and I wish I had paid more attention.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point about that is like the unlearning point is like I spent probably 2 months of last year just breaking egos, really, so to speak,
Yes.
unknowingly. No matter how anybody answered a question, it was wrong, even if they answered it right, And the reason for that is not because I wanted anybody to feel humiliated or inferior or anything like that, but it was about not teaching people to stop and think before they answer. And because in order for us to go on this learning journey and this learning process together, I had realized that we all have to accept that we don't know as much as we think we do. Because if you go around with that, if you go through life with that mindset that you know everything or you know everything you need to know, and you're in this place of just answering things automatic, or thinking that you need to know everything, because that's largely your ego in a defense mode. Like even to your clients, telling your client, like, I don't know, is okay. It's acceptable. And in order for us to truly grow, I realized that like nobody could have an ego. And if we could just completely eradicate that, then we can actually start the learning process. So about 2 months of last year was solely spent on just completely breaking egos, so that, okay, guys, now we're starting from zero, not minus 20. And now we can actually start the learning process. And it was very difficult, I think, for everybody, but I think it was one of the most effective and most beneficial things for everybody as well in the long term. And I think it also, through a lot of that resistance and that friction, it created an environment where we can actually learn from one another and also just be okay with being wrong. Because I believe our greatest constraint for growth is the fear of being wrong, or the fear of judgment, or the fear of that it's not okay to not know an answer. And so I wanted to create that environment initially so that we can get past that, which is getting over ourselves more than anything.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's actually very freeing, and you feel actually, for lack of a better word, better about yourself, smarter, when you don't have that preconceived idea that you know everything. I had a client the other day ask me a question, and I said, yeah, I don't know, but we have somebody on our team that would be able to help you with that. And I set her up on a call with Lexi, because that was Lexi. And that's what I love about our team, that we can do that. I want to ask you, what's a belief that you hold that most people would disagree with?
In regards to what?
Just with the good question back, with life, like life, work. Let's take.
I think, when it comes to work, I think if you look at the majority of, all of our coaches, they do this full time. Okay. And when I say full time, I mean, this is a big chunk of our lives. But I think that people have this idea that there needs to be this degree of work-life balance in order for you to be happy. Right. And I personally disagree with that. And I think that the purpose of life is not to, this is my opinion, it's not to go to work for 8 hours and then completely shut off and detach from the world. I think it's whether it's to find something or to build yourself through the process of something where you are feeling like you're constantly being stimulated and evolving and growing. Because I think that in life in general, we're born a blank canvas. And if that is literally the purpose of life, is to go through life, to grow, to evolve, to learn, and if you don't go through life with that mindset, or looking at every day as an opportunity to grow through the process of struggle and pain and adversity and challenge and stress and all these things, well, then you're doing yourself a disservice. That is literally the purpose of life. And then simultaneously to have an impact on people's lives around you, whether that might be 5 people or 5,000 people or 5 million people, depending on how many followers you have on social media. And I think that people are so obsessed and fixated on like trying to get a big follower count, for example, on social media, because for the wrong reasons. Because if you truly just care to help people and have an impact, and I told you guys this before, you can make a great business and have a great clientele base with 500 followers on Instagram. And if your intentions are correct, right? And the reason why people don't care for that, because they want the glam of that number, 5 million followers or 100,000 followers. But those things don't matter. It's just that you go through life wanting to have an impact on people's lives, and when you give your life to that, like you are in service to other people, well, that's where happiness comes from, through that process of life, not through working 9 to 5 and then going on a vacation and then checking out. Right. And some people may think this is a very extreme mindset, but I believe that everybody that works with us has that same way of thinking where they love doing it. And it's not because they necessarily even just love coaching people. And I'm sorry to say that. It's just that they love going through this process of their own personal journey, which ends up being beneficial, and the consequence of that ends up being impacting other people's lives.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I know for me, what you did for me in growth, and it has nothing to do with business. I don't know if I've ever told you this. It was getting over myself with the fact that I've carried fat on my legs. Like, I wanted people to believe that Debra Basch did not have fat on the back of her legs and her ass.
Identity.
Exactly. And so because of that, I dressed a certain way. And it was when I decided to become a competitor that I realized I have to take my pants off in front of my 29-year-old coach. And I remember just as a sidebar, my partner at the time going, "You're going to be in a bikini showing your backside to a 29-year-old guy?" I showed him your Instagram and all your competitors, like your gorgeous young women. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm not worried." I go, "Yeah." Anyways, getting over myself with that was so freeing, for have you to be able to say to me, "Yeah, well, you're still not lean enough for the goal."
Detaching,
yeah. It has opened the door for me to be very brave to take other chances. And I remember I have a client that I got her to a certain level, and now she's your client and you've taken her like out of the stratosphere. She was here and in the same position as me, practically having a meltdown in like, I can't go out there in my bikini. I go, "Don't worry, no one's judging." So that belief that you have about stripping us down and,
I think one of the most like heartbreaking things for me to see is, when I see a woman, for example, in her 40s and she's very insecure, and I think to myself, like, you had your whole life to get rid of that, and it's still there. And that's not a knock to the woman. It's just, you can get over that.
yes,
It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to feel that way, and I think that we do a very good job of helping people through that. And that's what people need, right? And I think that that's it. Like, we become stuck and set in these identities that we've created. And I think largely the greatest identities are created through high school, because there's the most amount of pressure that forces us to become something we're not, or don't want to be, or that we don't really identify with. And then I think the rest of our lives, unless we change it, we are trying to prove otherwise or reinforce that thing. It's like,
yeah,
I am good enough, and I am good enough because of, maybe I was not cool in high school, or I was made fun of, or I was bullied, or I was cool, and I need to keep proving that I am cool,
right.
And so I feel like that point of our life largely influences and shapes us. And I think that a lot of people don't figure it out, and it's not just about fitness coaching and body fat, and that's a representation of everything else.
Exactly.
As
that to me, I use that as the example, but it was so much more than that. It's so much, like, it goes so much deeper than that. But that was what my surface fear was.
Yes.
What is something that you refuse to compromise on, regardless of how much pressure is put on you?
I will never compromise on, the just integrity in our business, and I think that's very important to me. It doesn't, I've had supplement companies offer me, $10,000 a month. Here you go. No real big commitment. Just we just want you to tell your clients to use our product. And this was, 6 years ago or 5 years ago that a company in particular offered me this. And I said, unfortunately, I can't do it. I just can't do it because I wouldn't actually use this product. I wouldn't use everything from your line.
Right.
And because I wouldn't use everything from your line, I can't say that I do. Like, I don't mind saying I use the protein because I will, but I can't say everything. And they said, well, you gotta. And I said, like, you're better off just sending me free protein. And if I like it, I'll tell people about it. But if you send me everything and give me the $10,000 a month, I don't think this relationship will last more than 2 months because I know myself. And I just cannot lie or deceive for the sake of making a quick buck, and I think that that's a big part of our business and our coaches as well, is they do not promote things that they do not believe in. If you look at our coaches, they are the few coaches of everybody on the internet that is not promoting and marketing and selling supplements to people all the time, unless they use it, unless they genuinely use it. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but they genuinely believe in everything that they promote and advocate for. And I think that that's, I had to get rid of that because that wasn't initially the way things were. But, in general, that's just the most important thing for me, is that we always maintain a level of integrity for everything.
What is something that people assume about you, but it's just not true?
I think that one of the biggest things that people assume about me is that, I'm an asshole. However you want to word it. There are many synonyms for how we can describe this word that I've been called. Truthfully, I'm not a very social person, right? Like, I think growing up my whole life, I was never an extremely social person. I'm very introverted. So I think that people have a misconception about, like, my personality. And I think that I've also, because I was never really social, I also created an identity around that so that people didn't socialize with me. And just by doing that, I think that, people just develop this preconceived notion of me, or this preconceived expectation of, like, how I'm going to talk or how I'm going to act. And then I inherently adopted it as well. And I think that, a big part of it is just I'm not extremely social, and I think a lot, I ruminate a lot. So I don't say too much in general. And these are things that, like, I recognize can be misconstrued or misinterpreted. But it's, I think that, the underlying reason for why I don't think anybody would stick it through in this business doing what I do if you didn't really inherently care to help people. I think that that's first and foremost. And even when I'm hard on people, the underlying reason for being hard on people is because I want the best for people, even if they don't see it. And sometimes it takes people 2 years, and sometimes it takes people 2 days, and sometimes it takes people, 20 years, and I just got a message from one of my clients from 2017, and he just sent me an apology video, and he said, it took me so many years to realize, like, things you said to me, but I just want you to know it's and it was a nice message, and he said it stuck with me, and I don't look at that as a negative, it's like he learned he learned what I was trying to teach him. Having said that, I realized that I need to adjust my communication so that it's interpreted and perceived accurately to, what I'm actually trying to convey.
Oh, that's good. I'm sure that you get a lot of messages like that over the years, because you deliver messages to people, myself included, even at times when we're not ready to receive it and really understand it. And that just shows that he really is somebody with a growth mindset, because he, either through really hard knocks or whatever, and realized that what you said was true. I had a similar conversation with a former client who I just said that you got to take responsibility for what you're doing in life and stop pointing fingers at everybody, and they were like, you're right. I do. I point my finger at everybody else that's wrong.
I think ChatGPT helps to write what I want to write.
Yeah.
Put it in ChatGPT and say, make me sound nicer.
Oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. So do you have privacy, or do you do, like, you don't show your personal life on social media at all? And I will be honest, I've had people that know that I work for you or worked with you say, is he married? Does he have a girlfriend? Like, so you're very private. Are you private because, well, why are you private? is it for protection or why?
This is my private life.
Yeah. Okay.
I think in general, as I said, I've always been a very introverted person. I don't like to share too many details. You know, being transparent right now, I think that I've learned through the past and history that anytime I did it, you know, was used against me in some ways, when it shouldn't have been. So I think that, you know, I like to keep my personal life separate from my work life. And I think that it's important that I don't, it doesn't really serve any benefit. Um,
I agree. I agree
I,
100% with that.
yeah, I've never found like any benefit to it. I like people to maintain the focus of what I do in terms of, whether it's a client or whether it's a coach that works with us, that they are looking at, the work we do, and that's it. And that's the focus of it, and I dedicate the greatest part of my life to this. So I think that there's, I don't really have so much downtime, free time anyways, and I think that when I'm away from my work, I just want to be away from my work completely.
Right. And again, it's nobody's business. Like, it really isn't. If you were to have to start all over, what would you change anything in the process?
No. I mean, if I can do things differently, hypothetically, I would, but in reality, I wouldn't, because all of these painful lessons that I've learned were so beneficial and so instrumental. And it's not about like where I am today or what we've built today. That's a small fraction of it, but it's who you need to become in order to build this is the most important thing, right? It's so you can't fake that. So if somebody were to give me, this business today, I would fail anyways, because I didn't
Right.
deserve it. I didn't forge myself through that process to be able to acquire it the right way. And that's through like pain and gradual pain and exposure to pain and exposure to stress, and then developing the resiliency and the tolerance to be able to manage it and sustain it and grow it further and not fail. I think that if I look at every stage of where we've been, as you said, like when you first came in here, it was just bodybuilders. It was so raw and rugged. I remember I brought a horse in here one time, and now I won't even let people put their foot up on a bench.
Right.
I was revving a motorcycle in here at one point. And I'm honest about these things because I don't have anything to hide. And now I'm not okay with somebody bringing an energy drink in the gym, but there were different stages. And, at that point it was like just a bunch of buddies. And that was necessary because you know what? Nobody would come work for me at that point in time other than my buddies.
Right.
So it was a necessary thing at that point. And then as we grew, I recognized that things needed to change in order for us to grow. And it's not just about a business. It's about everybody within that business ultimately bears the consequence of not growing. So whether it's clients, whether it's coaches, everyone's going to fail if I don't make those tough and necessary decisions. So, I wouldn't, if I tried to start with where I am today with the mindset and all these things that this attitude and this perspective that I have, it wouldn't succeed anyways. You had to develop that gradually. And I think that, that's why I wouldn't change anything. But if I could do it, and you said just build it as quickly as you can, I could do it a lot quicker and a lot better without those unnecessary painful lessons. But they are necessary, and that's a metaphor for everything that people go through. It's like, just enjoy the process, no matter how difficult it is. Just learn to sit in that discomfort rather than try to exit, and try to evade it because it's unbearable, or you perceive it to be unbearable, because the growth is on the other side of that.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into, how did you know how to pick your team? Because if you look at us on social media, first of all, we're all very different.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different strengths. We all speak differently. And all of our pages really represent who we are. Like, you can get a pretty good idea by just looking at us without really diving deep and talking to us. How did you know? It's almost like a conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got your strings, your percussion, your horns.
Mm-hmm.
How did you know that that you'd be able to make us be so cohesive and successful?
Yeah. This is a very good question. I'm glad you asked it because, I thought about this many times. And I think that I've always thought this, that my greatest skill is my ability to put things together, right? Like put pieces together. I can zoom out and I can look at things and just be a project manager and find somebody that can do this and this and this and put the best together. And the glue or the common denominator amongst everyone within our businesses is that they have the underlying desire to help people. That's number one. They're good people. And I think that everything else can be taught, but you can't teach somebody how to be a good person. And if you're in a business where you want to, or you should be helping people, not want, but you should be helping people, you should want to help people, right? If you're in a business where it's about helping people, that should be there, because otherwise you're not going to stick that through and you're not going to guide people the right way. Somebody asked me a question about, or made a comment about manipulation and said, oh, that person manipulates people, it's bad. And I said, well, not necessarily. Manipulation can be a good thing as well. It's your motive for manipulating somebody. Because if you manipulate somebody, if you break somebody, for example, but you give them the tools and the resources and the aid to be able to build themselves better, the motivation for manipulation was good. Mm-hmm. But if you do it because it's like you're from a place of being malevolent or evil, it's bad. And that's what the inherent quality that all of our coaches have, is that they just truly want to help people. And I know this because there are many times where they do overtime, and they do way more than what somebody might have paid them to do. You'll get on a call with a client. They're not paying you to get on that call, but you're getting on that call to ensure that they are getting everything that they need.
Right.
And somebody that's just doing it for the paycheck or for an ego boost or whatever that motive is not going to go above and beyond. And, I remember I said something to our coaches initially. I said that you're going to have to do a lot and you're not going to get paid for it. But eventually, once you get enough clients, it will all make sense. But initially, you're going to have to do a lot. What I've realized is that nobody will do a lot without being paid for it unless they truly want to help people. Mm-hmm. And so you'll never get over that bridge in this business if you don't truly want to just make people's lives better. And some people deliver it in different ways. That's why there's no consistency when you look at our coaches. It's not like they're all competitors or they're all, same age or anything. There's no consistency. You wouldn't even be able to know that we're a team. And I think that's the most beautiful part about it, is that it's not about like optics of how we look or anything like that, or like similarities in anything, really. We all have different interests. But that is the thing that bonds us all together. And that's why, that's why we can help different types of people as well. We're not just cookie cutters of any one person in particular.
No, I like that. I find I can have a conversation with the youngest person on our team very easily, being the oldest person on the team, because we both have the same desire. Now, we're not going to talk about, hey, what'd you do on the weekend? Hey, what did you like? But when we're talking work or things that we enjoy, the age difference, and I'm not going to say what it is to protect that person, not myself. It's not a problem. But if I go, sometimes I'll do a Pilates class with my daughter. Say, Mom, come do a Pilates class. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to spend time with them, so I'll do it. All the instructors look alike. It's cookie cutter. And I always think, it's not like us.
Mm-hmm. That's marketing.
Yeah.
That's all marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's trying to pull a certain audience, but we're so much deeper than that.
Exactly. Yeah. I always think about that, how we're so, and people say that, wow, you guys are so different, but yet the message is always the same.
We're cohesive in the message, but we're just unique as people.
Yeah. Is there something that you wish that you would say more often or do more often?
No, I think I pretty much say it all.
Good.
I mean, sometimes I say to myself, I'll take a day off and then I come in. But
yeah, you do say that. Like I'm going, I need to have more time.
I'm off this week.
I'm off, but you always come in.
Yeah.
You're always here.
I will, to answer that question, I think that I've learned to, and I need to be more expressive in how me as a coach, for example, I've heard from some of my athletes, like, I know you think I'm good because you've told other people, but you never told me, And I realized that, like, yeah, I'm not very good at expressing like emotional communication and conversation, but so they understand that, like, I've told other people they're good, which means they are good, but I just never said it to them. And so it's not one thing I wish, it's one thing I am doing more of, which is just being more, I don't like the word vulnerable too much, but I guess it would be more vulnerable to be able to express what I feel. As I said, sometimes I feel that maybe would have an adverse effect where people will maybe not work as hard.
I
So I
agree.
fear that, right?
Of course. I actually have to agree with you, because I've given compliments to lifestyle clients, and then the next week it's been shitty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. They cheat on the diet that same night.
exactly. Oh, coach says I look
Yeah.
great. Coach says I'm doing good. So what? So
with everything, it's just a sweet spot, and we're always finding a sweeter spot with the work that we do. We become more delineated in that thing that we're doing, and as you become better, you become more narrow in your vision, right? And
right.
that's like you just get better at maybe articulating it, or better at having a more robust vocabulary where you can strike a little bit more precisely.
In your experience, because you've noticed people get success in business, working for you, success on the stage, success becoming pros, do you think that success makes people more honest or changes them,
I
like
think
about themselves?
I think that all of us go through life putting on a mask because that's what society expects. And in order for us to progress or grow in society, we have to conform to a degree. And as we have more success, we feel more invincible. So we think like, I don't have to show this anymore. And you just become more of what you are. Doesn't matter how much success I have. I'm not going to go buy a supercar. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just, I'm not doing it because I want to prove anything to anyone in terms of like status or anything like that. I'm not saying that's why everyone does it, because some people do buy it because they genuinely love it.
Right.
But I just learned that you become more of the person that you've been suppressing, and it eventually will always come out. There's a famous quote from, I feel like it's like Nietzsche or Freud, which is like all suppressed emotions end up coming out, good or bad, at some point in your life. And I think that's very synonymous for that same thing, which is like everything comes out. You can't bottle it up forever. But having more power or having more status or having more success, you feel more afforded to be your true self and not have to hide, because I think that you get a pass much easier, and people, aren't. It's like Kanye West, for example. I can't understand why people would still follow him.
Right.
But if it was somebody with much less success, that person would have been canceled a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you get a lot more grace as a result of just having that status, and you feel that you're untouchable and do and say whatever you want. I think that that's who he always was. It's just he feels it's okay now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that people do place a little too much importance on success in terms of the dollar value and status. I don't think we have anybody on the team that behaves like that at all.
You know what? It's
Like we like nice things, but we're not.
One thing I always said, and you remember this, is that I always want our coaches to make good money, because
Yes.
if they make good money, they're always going to do what's in the best interest of the client. But when somebody maybe is not making as much money, they may tell somebody that they need to work with them longer than they actually do.
Right.
So, this way of thinking that we have is that whatever is in the best interest of the client is always in the best interest of the business and the coach. Because if the client is happy, they will continue to come back. If the client is dissatisfied, they will never come back. So always do what's in the best interest of the person. But when you're operating from a place of scarcity, perhaps, and you're not making as much, or you're trying to make ends meet, you may not do what's in the best interest of the person you're working with. And I never want that. It goes back to the integrity.
Right. Yeah. How did you come up with the name Lady the F Up?
That's a good question. I made a t-shirt, just put it on a t-shirt. I thought it was like man the F up, but man the F up is so cliche, right? So I thought like lady is, and then the F word all in the same sentence is kind of edgy, And at that time I was doing a lot of edgy stuff, like branding stuff, but and just trying different things, and people loved it, and then it just took off. And then we made a booth at the Toronto Women's Show, and it was, I think we sold like 500 shirts. people loved it. And Rima and Lexi were already coaching under Hammer Fitness. Everything was just Hammer Fitness. And we had Hammer Fitness and Hammer Fitness Lifestyle. But I thought that, it was doing both lifestyle and athletes a disservice to have them all under one roof, because the messaging was not clear. And we weren't targeting to one person in particular. It was a little bit confusing. So I decided to separate them. And then Rima and Lexi obviously are the head of that and driving it forward. And that's why there's never any visibility of me in that brand, because I'm not the best person to do it. You guys are. You guys do a wonderful job of it. But I have the vision for the brand. I have the vision for how we should do things. But I give a lot of autonomy to you guys to be able to. You're at the front line. You're working with clients. You guys understand the women that you're working with way more than I ever could. But I think the underlying qualities and characteristics, and no matter what business you're in, are all the same.
Right.
Whether it's working with men or athletes or women or serving food at a restaurant, I think that it's all the same, how you treat people and how you provide impeccable service. So that's why I can be in the back orchestrating that, but you guys are the ones that are actually, doing the work, and that's why it works.
I remember being on social media. I was just your client then, and you were training a client of yours, and she had the t-shirt on, and I was like, I have to have that t-shirt. Like, where can, and I remember like just diving deep to find it, and then it was all sold out. Like, I saw the store, but it's it's really cool how that's evolved.
I also think it's like it's a representation for women's empowerment, right? And
Right.
That's what that name represents. And I think that there was and there is a huge push for that, rightfully so. And that was, I think the timing of it was just right as well, and we've really tweaked the messaging behind the brand as well, right? I think that it was a lot of this initially, and we had to fine tune and tweak. And that's why I'm not ashamed of anything I've said or done, or even how we positioned the brand in the past, because it was all a learning experience. And as you understand your market and as you understand people, you tweak things and you make them better to be able to accommodate to people more appropriately.
Right. Thank you so much for today, Amer. We've run out of time for today. Today is part 1. Stay tuned for next week when we bring back part 2.